Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm Rod Taylor, National Leader of the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. I'm here in my home office in Telkwa, BC, northern British Columbia, and I'm backed by both the flags of Canada and the province of British Columbia because I also serve as the provincial leader of the Christian Heritage Party of BC. Most of you know me in my federal role, but currently I am a candidate running in the BC provincial election, which started on Saturday. So I'm going to show you a screenshot of the riding. If you look at the map, it's northern BC, but this is a map of federal districts. Stikine Bulkley Valley is a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger than Bulkley Valley-Stikine, which is the provincial district. So let me just show you that one a second. As you see, the Bulkley Valley-Stikine district runs up to the Yukon border. It includes towns like Smithers, Telkwa, Hazelton, Meziadin, Morristown, the Old Hazelton, South Hazelton, Meziadin, Junction, Stewart, and on up to Iskut, Dease Lake, and Atlin. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be serving as a candidate in this district. And of course, we're running in BC because Victoria has just as many problems as Ottawa, believe it or not. Hard to imagine you could have two governments that are so corrupt and befuddled. But we have a socialist government in British Columbia. Some people call this BC the left coast. And but we don't want to be left behind when it comes to moving forward on moral and economic issues. So that's why I'm putting my hat in the ring to represent the citizens of Bulkley Valley-Stikine and hopefully have a seat at the table in the legislature in Victoria. So I'm going to share with you the communique that came out earlier this week. And just one second here. So I'm going to share with you what I wrote in the communique earlier this week, and that'll give you a pretty good idea why I'm running and why it's important to have pro-life candidates on the ballot in British Columbia. The BC Conservative Party does not have a policy of protecting innocent human life. The Christian Heritage Party of BC does. And that's one of the primary distinctions. There are a few others, but that one is central to our understanding of why it's important to have the Christian Heritage Party on the ballot in Bulkley Valley-Stikine. So on Saturday, September 21st, British Columbia lurched into campaign mode as the long-awaited writ was dropped and the gloves came off. Voters in BC with any moral conscience and even a small amount of economic common sense have finally reached a tipping point, as eventually happens every time the top-down socialist NDP mangles the province for a few years. It happened in 2001. When the BC Liberals under Gordon Campbell swept them from office. It happened in 1975 when the Socreds under Bill Bennett and later under Bill Vander Zalm took BC back from the fumbling hands of the NDP. And it seems like the NDP, who have ruled or misruled BC these past 7 years with an iron fist, with wild, careless spending habits, and with no regard at all for the moral sensitivities of BC citizens, will go down to defeat once again under John Rustad's rejuvenated BC Conservatives, and we will welcome that change. But how deep will that change go? What will our schools look like under a BC Conservative government? What about the slaughter of the innocent preborn taking place every day in BC hospitals and clinics? What about BC's complicity in the federal government's doctor-assisted suicide regime, the programs and protocols that have made BC's death toll from intentional medical interference 10 times higher than it is in crazy California? Did you know that about 5% of all deaths in British Columbia are the result of a doctor prescribing and administering lethal drugs intended to kill the patient? The incumbent NDP have been so devoted, in fact, to killing off the elderly and the vulnerable that they would not tolerate any facility who refused to participate in that program. In fact, they went so far as to steal an $8.5 million facility built by volunteer funds, contributions, free will donations by the Delta Hospice Society, because that society refused to stoop so low as to kill their patients. So what did the NDP do? Instead of thanking them for their integrity, they stole their facility. They had a beautiful 10-bed facility, palliative care, and were providing wonderful end-of-life care for those who needed it. Now that facility has been taken away by the NDP, who like to end life prematurely. And it's very sad what's happening in our province today. Of course, it was not the BC Conservatives that did that. BC Conservatives, I have to acknowledge, are our main competitors, my main competitor in this campaign. But where were they? Where were the BC Conservatives, so those now serving in the BC Conservatives, when David Eby and Adrian Dix were baying for blood? When that evil act took place, the BC Conservatives had not yet caught the wind that is now in their sails. They have momentum now, and I'm glad they do. Their current leader and the other four who have since crossed the floor were still wearing the colors of the BC Liberals. That party since changed their name to BC United. Of course, they weren't very united because their leader, Kevin Falcon, booted John Rustad from his caucus, which was a very unwise and consequential move. But the BC Liberals were allowing the NDP to fritter away any semblance of common sense and economic strength. And it's gone. Now, BC is a province in turmoil. We're in debt. We have homeless cities out of control. We have drug overdoses out of control. Our healthcare system has been trashed. And it was done under the BC NDP's watch, but the BC Liberals did not enough to hold them to account. Where was the moral clarity when the BC Liberals themselves last formed government? Well, abortions continued unabated during their tenure, about 15,000 per year. The bubble zones preventing peaceful protest near abortion clinics, which were passed into law by the NDP in 1995, those bubble zones remained in place under the BC Liberals. In 2016, it was a BC Liberal government that added transgenderism to the BC Human Rights Code, all three readings in one day. And not one BC Liberal voted against it. John Rustad was a BC Liberal that day, and he and others in his caucus, allowed by their silence the creation of special rights for promoters and practitioners of gender confusion in the schools and in society. Now, at long last, John Rustad has taken a stand against the gender-preoccupied propaganda being promoted in our public schools. Now he is speaking up against the genital mutilation of young people and the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones on children, especially when it goes against the wishes of their parents. And we're very glad that he's doing this. We kind of wish he had taken a stand when the government he represented was handing over the reins to the LGBT lobbyists while they were allowing SOGI to be introduced in our public schools. SOGI, by the way, sexual orientation, gender identity. But we're pleased now to have John Rustad as an ally in this fight. The Christian Heritage Party of Canada and the Christian Heritage Party of BC have for a long time consistently exposed and challenged the 2006 Corin Agreement when no other parties in BC were talking about it. That wicked pact signed between the BC Liberal government and two homosexual men gave those men unprecedented and privileged influence over BC government policies. Back in 2006, I called it BC's best kept, worst secret. It exemplified the moral compromise and the political pandering that has led BC and also our nation down the road of anarchy, poverty, debt, and social collapse. Right now, there are many good folks, both federally and provincially, who have the highest ideals and the best of intentions, but when they vote, they're placing their trust and confidence in people who have mastered political success at the expense of moral clarity. They're voting against the criminals now in office, and we're glad they are. But they're voting for those who are willing to compromise their values for political success. That cannot end well, and it never does. See, we cannot have a booming economy while we tolerate the shedding of innocent blood. Our nation is polluted with it, and the consciences of many of our doctors, nurses, politicians, and judges are defiled by it. We cannot have safe streets and peaceful neighborhoods while we cater to criminals and throw peaceful pro-life grandmothers in jail. We can't cultivate the respect for our elders and respect for law and order when we pay professionals to inject the elderly with lethal substances against every inclination of our conscience and moral teaching. We can't teach children the benefits of frugality and thrift, of disciplined spending and sacrificial giving, while we allow our politicians to spend money they don't have on things we don't need. When politicians lie to our faces on TV and claim to be doing all this for our benefit, well, people see through that eventually. And we hope BC voters will see through it in this electoral season. As I mentioned earlier, I'm National Leader of CHP Canada, but I'm also serving as Leader of CHP-BC. And I'm running as a candidate in Bulkley Valley-Stikine. Our BC voting day is on October 19th. Because the rot and the corruption and the moral compromise are just as bad in Victoria as they are in Ottawa. And provincial elections are one of the places we can bring biblical truth to a secular audience. For those who live in BC, you can support us in our campaign, and get involved directly. You can write to me, leader@chp.ca, and I can help you if you want to contribute to my campaign. But if you don't live in BC, you're not allowed to give money to a BC political campaign, but you can certainly support us with your prayers, and we'll appreciate that very much. The Bible says when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people mourn. Well, all across this country, there's a lot of mourning going on right now. Let's pray for a renewal, an awakening, and a new dedication to the principles and the values of our God. Without him, we can do nothing, but with God, all things are possible. Now, before I close, I want to read to you from the brochure we will be distributing in this campaign. They're being printed and they're on their way. We should have them any day now. And when we get them, we will be sending them out to the residents of Stikine Bulkley Valley. But I'm going to put it on the screen and share with you, read to you the things that we have in our brochure, the main parts of our platform, let's put it that way. So we start by saying, I will work hard for you, and that's true. I work hard as the leader of CHP Canada and as the leader of CHP-BC, and I will work hard for the residents of Bulkley Valley-Stikine if I have the opportunity to serve them in the legislature in Victoria. On health care, we would repeal Bill 36, and we would put doctors, nurses, chiropractors, and dentists back in charge of health care, not the government. We would rehire and compensate doctors and nurses who were fired by the NDP with their brutal tactics during COVID. We would restore to the Delta Hospice Society their palliative care facility, which was stolen by the NDP. Shame on them. We would build more assisted living, long-term care, and palliative care facilities because we need them. We would allow optional private health care to fill the gaps created by the NDP as they've destroyed our healthcare system. And we would stop wasting taxpayer dollars on abortion, euthanasia, and sex change surgeries. We would use healthcare dollars for healthcare, on urgently needed medical care like hips, hearts, and so on. On education, another area of provincial jurisdiction, we would end the political indoctrination on race, climate, and gender in our public schools. We would focus on actual education. We would implement more trades training in our high schools. We would equip students for the real world. They can find a job and make a living. We would end the gender agenda in schools, and we would introduce a voucher system so that give parents and their children school choice, find the best arrangement for their children to get the best education possible. In regards to the environment, we would resist the ridiculous climate change alarmism, and we would encourage responsible resource use and development. CO2, carbon dioxide, is not pollution. It's a natural gas. It's good for the environment. Plants need it. And this whole thing is a fraudulent misuse of the media as they've pushed this agenda and the carbon taxes and all the rest of it. We would expose and ban atmospheric geoengineering and solar dimming, some of you know as chemtrails. We would improve wildlife habitat. We would manage our forests to better prevent forest fires. Prevention is a lot easier than trying to put them out once they're out of control. We would protect access to BC lands for all BC citizens for hunting, camping, fishing, hiking, berry picking, and enjoying BC's beautiful wild places. We would ensure that these open net fish farms are closed as soon as possible with respect to the people that are working at them now and who have invested in them. We have to think about their welfare as well. But we must protect BC's wild salmon population, and closing these open net fish farms is part of that. We would eliminate all raw sewage still being discharged into BC waters. Sadly, that is still the case in a few areas, and we need to put an end to it. It's disgusting. It's shameful that we haven't solved that problem already. We would protect your food security. We support BC agriculture. After all, farmers feed the world. We would promote small farms and backyard gardens. We would protect consumer choice. We would demand product labeling so that foods containing GMOs or harmful chemicals are properly labeled so that people know what they're buying. We would allow farm gate sales for all locally grown foods. We would protect life. Our policy is the protection of innocent human life from conception until natural death. No more taxpayer dollars for abortions, doctor-assisted suicides, and gender reassignment surgeries that do so much harm to young people. We would end BC's bubble zone restrictions on peaceful protest, and we would provide life-affirming information and compassionate support for pregnant women. We would protect children and youth from street drugs. We would end BC's failed safer supply and punish drug traffickers. We would protect children and youth from violent crime. We would end the court delays and keep violent offenders off the streets. We would protect children and youth from sexual indoctrination and phony gender reassignment surgery. We would protect children and youth from debt and inflation. Our current BC deficits are robbing future generations of financial opportunity. It's their money that's being spent. We would protect your private property. We would protect the water rights for all BC farmers, protect firearms owners and hunters from unlawful gun grabs by the federal government. We would stop the NDP's redistribution of BC lands, and we would protect hard-earned wages from excessive taxation. You work hard for your money. The government shouldn't be taking away and throwing it around. We would protect your rights and freedoms. We would protect free speech. We would protect parental rights to guide their own children on moral issues. We would establish conscience protection for doctors, nurses, and teachers. And we would resist top-down edicts from the UN, the WF, the WHO, and other globalists seeking to control our policies in Canada. In terms of the economy, something that's important to all of us, we would balance the budget and eliminate deficit spending. We would end BC's inflationary carbon tax. We would end it. It's doing nothing but hurting you in the pocketbook. We would eliminate tent cities, and we would develop safer housing strategies for the homeless. And we would work towards improving the affordability of housing in British Columbia. We would ban the foreign purchases of homes and farmland. BC homes, BC farms need to be owned by British Columbia residents, and we would move in that direction. The soaring price of homes in Vancouver is largely a result of foreign purchases, as well as just the inflationary trends that come about from the carbon tax. We're going to work to end all that and make BC affordable once again. Well, thank you for your attention. I'm very pleased to be able to share this time with you. I look forward to the next 4 weeks. We're about almost the first week, almost past of a 4-week campaign. But we will be having debates. We've already been putting up signs from one end to the other, and we will be distributing those brochures. We welcome your questions. Again, you can contact me at leader@chp.ca. And if you would like to contribute to my campaign, I'm going to make it easy for you to do that. Just contact me by email, and I'll give you all the information you need. To learn more about the Christian Heritage Party of British Columbia, what we stand for, you can visit our website, chpbc.ca. Thank you so much. God bless you. We look forward to speaking with you again next week for another edition of CHP Talks.